Testing, 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 testing. One, two. Testing, 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 testing. All right, so peace and power elevation be to all you beautiful people out there. I hope everybody can hear me. Yeah, I hope everybody can hear me. Peace and power elevation be to all of y'all out there. This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in the bed. All right. So today's topic, I am going to be dealing with the subject about Benjamin E. Mays. Yeah, so that's the subject. It's going to be about Benjamin E. Mays, and he was a activist, a civil rights activist. And not only he was an activist, but he was also a minister. And see, what we gonna realize that a lot of activists, they were a part of the Christian church and the Christian community. Let me make sure my sound is okay. All right, you guys, give me a moment. I'm gonna switch it out real quick. All right, so let me try this again. Testing, testing, testing. I hope the sound quality is good. Peace, brother Chauncey. Peace, brother Chauncey. I hope everything is going well with you. I hope everything going well with you. All right, let me try this again. Let me make sure that my sound is okay. All right, so my sound is good over here. Okay, cool. Everything's good. All right, so now give me a second. All right, so now that everything sounded good over here, right, as far as my sound quality is concerned, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So today's subject is going to be about Benjamin E. Mays. All right, as I mentioned, Benjamin E. Mays was a civil rights activist, and he was also a president of Morehouse College. As a matter of fact, Dr. King learned under him. Okay, so what I'm dealing with is the unsung activists and those who were philosophers, psychologists, and psychiatrists. So a lot of our people did not gain recognition for the work they have done as far as community wise and all the great things, etc. Okay, now, now that I got everybody's attention, all right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is a picture of Benjamin E. Mays. That's a picture of him later on in life. All right. So let me stop sharing that screen. So let's go to Georgia Encyclopedia. All right. So if you guys can see that, cool. Go ahead and pull it out. All right. So according to the Georgia Encyclopedia, which can be found on GeorgiaEncyclopedia.org. So it says, perhaps best known as the longtime president of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, Benjamin Mays was a distinguished African American minister, educator, scholar, and social activist. Peace to TK. How you doing, TK? Peace to Vinyasa. How you doing, brother Vinyasa? All right, let me continue. So he was a social activist. He was also a significant mentor to civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. and was among the most articulate and outspoken critics of segregation before the rise of modern civil rights movement in the United States. So Mays also filled leadership roles in several significant national and international organizations, among them the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the International Young Men's Christian Association, right? The World Council of Churches, the United Negro College Fund, the National Baptist Convention, the Urban Leagues, the Southern Conference for Human Welfare, the Southern Conference Educational Fund, and the Peace Corps Advisory Committee. All right, so it says that he was born August the 1st of 1894 or 95 in rural area outside of 96, South Carolina. He was the youngest of 8 children born to Luvena Carter and Hezekiah Mays, tenant farmers and free people. A consistent theme in May's boyhood and early adulthood was his quest for education against overwhelming odds. He refused to be limited by the widespread poverty and racism of his birthplace. After some struggle, he gained acceptance to Bate College in Maine. After completing his BA, there in 1920, Mays entered the University of Chicago as a graduate student, earning an MA in 1925 and a PhD in School of Religion in 1935. All right, so these are his accomplishments. Again, that's a picture of him down there. So it says May's education at Chicago was interrupted several times, first by stints as a teacher at Morehouse and at South Carolina State College. During his tenure at the latter, he met his future wife, Sadie Gray. They were married for 43 years from 1926 until her death in 1969. Mays worked for the Urban League and the YMCA. Oh, you can't hear my sound? Hold on. Shit. Hold on. All right, hold on. Okay, can't you hear me now? I hope you can hear me now. Let me know. Let me know if you can hear me before I continue. Can everybody hear me? Let me know if y'all can hear me before I continue. Okay, well, I'm assuming that everybody can hear me. All right, so let me just go ahead and continue on then. Okay, cool. All right, then. Well, let me go ahead and continue. All right, so, anyways, where was I at? So, yeah, I stopped where it says Sadie Gray. They were married for 43 years from 1926 until her death in 1969. Mays worked for the Urban League and YMCA similarly postponed his doctoral efforts. So in 1933, with co-author Joseph Nicholson, Mays published a groundbreaking study entitled The Negro Church, which describes the unique origins and character of this central African American institution, offering a critique of some of its problematic clerical practices. All right. And then it goes further down in the talking about less than a year ago, year before, completing his dissertation at Chicago in the spring of 1935, Mays accepted a position as Dean of the School of Religion at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Mays distinguished himself as an effective administrator, elevating the Howard program to legitimacy and distinction among schools of religion. During his tenure there, Mays also traveled a great deal, which would become a consistent aspect of his career. Perhaps the most significant of these travels was a trip in 1936 to India, where he spoke at some length with Mahatma. I can't pronounce this man's name, Mahatma Gandhi, anticipating an exchange of ideas that would come to fruition during the civil rights movement some years later. Mays also continued to his scholarly effort. In 1938, he published The Negro's God as a reflected in his literature, a study of the image and concept of God in African American Christianity. All right, before I continue, as you can see, he went to school and studied his degree in. Let me see. So he earned his BA. Right, going back up in here, he earned his BA and he earned his master in 1925 and his PhD in the School of Religion. All right, so as you can see that he was very prominent. He was a Christian man, um, and he was into ministry. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of those civil rights activists, right, during that time period, a lot of them were into the Christianity doctrine. They were into churches. So black churches played a lot of role in freedom fighting, liberation, pan-Africanism, all of that. They played a lot of role into that. So we can give them credit for that. I mean, a lot of people will speak out and say uh they don't subscribe or adherent to Abrahamic belief systems and whatnot, and they don't go along with that. But you gotta look at the roots and origin of all these things. You gotta look at that your ancestors, right? They followed these different schools of thoughts. They went into these concept of Christianity. They went into the concept of Islam. They was into all that stuff, but their main focus was on liberating the people, regardless of what their belief system was. Okay. So we got to give credit to the Black Christian church. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of wrong things going on, but guess what? That's throughout every institution, not only in Christianity. You know what I'm saying? They really put in a lot of work. They put in a lot of effort. They built a lot of programs for African American community. They have really done a lot. Okay. So if it wasn't for those who were Christian, you wouldn't be comfortable as Black people today to say you're a Pan-Africanist or to be proud to claim yourself as an African if it wasn't for the church. I mean, let's just keep it real. And as I mentioned, majority of the activists, they were into Abrahamic religion. That's what they followed because they thought it was a form of salvation for them. It was a form of liberation. All right. So let's go ahead and continue on. So it says in 1940, Mays became the president of Morehouse College. There he rose to national Okay. There he rose to national prominence, enjoying great influence on key events in U.S. history. His most famous student at Morehouse was Martin Luther King Jr. All right, so during King's years as an undergraduate at Morehouse in the mid 1940s, the two developed a close relationship that continued until King's death in 1968. May's unwavering emphasis on two ideas, in particular, the dignity of all human beings and incompatibility of American democratic ideas of with American social practices became vital strains in the language of King and the civil rights movement. Although May's essays and sermons throughout his years at Morehouse relayed these ideas, their clearest as explication came in his book Seeking to be a Christian in Race Relation, published in 1957. Hey Candy, how you doing? How you doing, Candy? All right, so then you go down to here. It says, as an administrator at Morehouse, Mays expanded and streamlined the structure of the institution and enhanced its academic reputation. He was a highly successful fundraiser, securing the needed financial support for Morehouse to pursue its educational goals. Beyond such practical concern, Mays left a legacy of prominent Morehouse graduates and lent the college his own inimitable style characterized by rigor and enthusiasm for the Morehouse mission. So after his year's retirement in 1967 from Morehouse, Mays remained active in several social and political organizations of prominence and was in demand as a speaker and lecturer. As the school board's first black chair, he oversaw the desegregation of Atlanta's public school system between 1970 and 1981. He also published two autobiographies in these years, Born to Rebel in 1971 and Lord, the People Have Driven Me On in 1981, and he died in 1984. Okay. All right, so that's the citation of article at the bottom, and this comes from GeorgiaEncyclopedia.org. Okay, so that's the biography of Benjamin E. Mays. And as you can see, he was the Morehouse president. He has worked alongside with Dr. King, and he still had good relationship. Now, before I continue on, first and foremost, I want to say happy birthday to our ancestor, Malcolm X. So today is Malcolm X's birthday. Happy birthday to him. May peace be upon him. May the ancestor be with him. May Allah be with him. So I just wanted to say that. But yeah, so there's so many people that have done a lot of things within our community that have not received enough credit. So now what I'm about to show you guys is the website called archive.org. So many of you may not be familiar with archive.org. It's like an internet library. So you can go on there, you can check out books. You can borrow books for like 2 weeks. You can borrow books for an hour or however you want to do it. Okay. So you go on the website. So let me show you all the books that they have about him so far. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see it. Cool. This one is called The Christian in Race Relation by Benjamin E. Mays. Seeking to be a Christian in Race Relation. All right. And then you got the Posthumous Reflection, a letter to my mentor. Okay. By Fred C. Lofton. And his autobiography, which is called Born to Rebel. All right. And this one's called The Negro's God. So let's look at The Negro's God for a moment. I mean, I'm just curious to know about The Negro's God. Shout out to you, TK. I love you too. Much love to you. Much love to you. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and borrow this. All right, as you can see, it says The Negro's God as reflected in his literature. Okay. Yes, I know your name. Yes, I know your name, TK. I know your name. I mean, I know your YouTube name. I know your YouTube name, but you have a different name outside of YouTube. All right. So I'm scrolling down as you can see. Let me see. Brother Vinyasa said was working on that presentation at TK. It has at me at National Baptist Convention was going to share those with you. Okay. Um, I mean, you're welcome to share anything on here. Any information that you feel like that is valuable, you can go ahead and share it on here. I don't mind you doing so. I ain't got no issue with that. All right, so let's go down. All right, so that's the preface. I'm trying to skip all of this, etc. So here is the table of content. Here's the introduction, the ideas of God in the literature of the Negro masses, ideas of gods in classical literature 1760 to 1865, ideas of God in classical literature 1865 to 1914, otherworldly classical literature after 1914. So he studied a lot into classical literature, as we can see in this book. So the impartiality of God and the unity of mankind. Malicious, I mean, um, I cannot even think of the word right now. Ma- Y'all get it. Okay, but anyways, idea of God in classical Negro literature, ideas of God involving frustration, doubt, God's impotence, and his non-existent. Okay, so what I was trying to say, miscellaneous. I couldn't even think of the word. I couldn't even get it off the top of my head. Um, Now let's go to chapter 1, which is the introduction. So it says, in this chapter, terms are defined. The dominant trends in Negro life that developed during the period of the study are indicated. The main arguments are briefly outlined. The reason for specializing in the Negro group is given, and the method of approach is set forth. So it says, Negro literature includes the chief production of Negroes from 1760 up to the present time, slave narratives, biography, autobiography, addresses, novel, poetry, and the writings of social scientists. These are labeled classical Negro literature. Negro literature also include modern Sunday school production, prayers, sermons, and Negro spirituals. These are called mass Negro literature. They contain the ideas of God that reaches the masses primarily through the church and through the minister in public utterance. All right. So it says the time span on investigation from 1760 to the present is divided into three epochs. The first epoch embraces the period from 1760 through the Civil War. The second epoch runs from the Civil War to the 1914, and the third period covers the time from the beginning of the World War to the present. All right. Okay, so not to go any further, well, you know what? Let me just go ahead and all right, so he talked about the first epoch. The first epoch braces a period from 1760 through the Civil War, right? So it said it is logical to begin with 1760 because in that year appeared the single point or Jupiter Hammond, who, as far as we know, was the first Negro poet to develop on American soil. It is logical to close the first epoch with the Civil War because a new day dawned for the Negro with emancipation. At the beginning of the first era, certainly before the close of the 18th century, segment in some quarters was growing in favor of the emancipation of the Negro, while at the same time the number of slaves was greatly increasing, particularly in the South. The war with England resulting in the independence of America, with her declaration that all men are created free and equal, and the basic teachings of Christianity aroused a few clergymen and political leaders to cry out against the institution of slavery before the close of the 18th century. These preachments were not effective, as evidenced by the fact that in 1770 there were approximately 700,000 slaves in the 13 colonies against 4 million at the time of emancipation. These, this increase being due to importation, smuggling, and natural increases. As slave labor proved to be more and more profitable, it became intensively more difficult to arouse segment against it. However, between 1830 and 1840, they had developed not only an anti-slavery movement, but a movement to abolish slavery on the ground that it was a more evil and contrary to the law of God. And it said it should prove a revelation to observe how the Negro thought of God in the period from 1760 to 1865. During the latter part of this era, the pro-slavery and anti-slavery forces were engaging in bitter controversy. All right. In this in this era, slavery reached its peak and culminated in a great civil war. The result was the emancipation of the slave. And it says second era. From the Civil War to 1914, it is also significant for the study of the development of the idea of God in Negro literature. The first part of this epoch includes the period of Reconstruction. Perhaps no phase of American history has caused more bitter controversy than the Reconstruction era, and possibly no section of American history has been treated with so much passion and bias. Be that as it may, during this period from 1865 to 1880, Negroes played a great part in the affairs of government. The Southern Negro in the Reconstruction era helped to shape the affairs of the state in a way not since realized by him. The period was followed by the disenfranchisement of the Negro, his domination by white workers, and the development of deep-seated race prejudice. What did this era contribute to the Negro's idea of God? This second period is significant again because it includes the years in which two distinguished Negroes were rising to fame, Paul Laurence Dunbar and Booker T. Washington. Race consciousness began to dawn quite strikingly with Dunbar, and he became the first great interpreter of Negro life. In this period, Booker Washington did most effective work. Without doubt, he was one of the most distinguished Americans of his day. All right. So it goes on to say the third era begins with 1914 and merits a more detailed analysis than the other two periods, not only because of the great social and economic upheavals resulting from the World War, but also because their development in this period and awakening race consciousness and increased educational advantages for the Negro, as shown by the numerous literary production of the period. And check this out. It says the great social, economic, and religious upheaval of Negroes since emancipation occurred during the migratory period from 1914 to 1925, when Negroes moved from south to north and from rural to urban areas. Although Negroes have migrated from the south to the north since 1815, since the exodus to the west of 1879, there has been a steady migration of Negroes from the south to points in the north. The most colossal and significant movement began around 1914. The reasons for this are not difficult to state. As foreigners residing in America returned to Europe to participate in the World War, as the war put a stop to the great influx of Europeans to America, the Negroes were sought to work in the industries of the North. It is conservatively estimated that from 1914 to 1915, only to the World War, the numbers of foreign immigrants to the United States decreased from 1,218,480 to 326,700. Almost simultaneously, the World War was the devastation of the one crop system of the South by the boll weevil and the occurrence of unusual floods in the main cotton states during 1915. So these calamities further encourage the migration of the Negro. So he going to the history lesson, but check this out, what he says right here. And then I'm going to start reading. So it says, when the war began, the Negro served actively abroad as a participant in the struggle to make the world safe for democracy. As a result of this experience, the Negro gained a new appreciation of his importance in the world. Almost overnight, Negroes from the most backward and restricted area of American life were transplanted to Europe to fight alongside whites, American, Frenchmen, Englishmen, and Italians in a common cause. Also, his experience of freedom from discrimination in France was something new to him. His experience, his experiences in Europe gave him a new conception of his status as a person, a conception which flowered forth in much of the post-war literature. This new estimate of himself could not have been achieved apart from this larger experience. A more detailed analysis of the period should further justify the dating of the third period from 1914. All right. All right then. So basically what you got right there, it was basically a history lesson. So he goes into the history lessons about African American, their involvement of movements and their rebellions against slavery. So you had the abolitionists and the abolition movement taking place during that time period. Okay. All right. So, but he also gets into the concept about the idea of God in the literature of the Negro. So let's see what he talks about on page 19 real fast. All right. So let's go to page 19. As a matter of fact, let me do it this way. Sorry. Hold on. All right. So right here, it says the ideas of God and literature of the Negro masses. So it says A, the spirituals. The mass literature includes the spiritual, sermon, prayers, and Sunday school literature. It is the literature which contains the ideas of God that are taught to churchgoers through the channel named ideas that reach the people in sermons and through the ministers in public utterance. These ideas are distinguishable from those that are more likely to be concealed from the masses in literary production other than sermon. The ideas of God as found here and their relation to the main emphasis in chapter 1 are compared with those found in classical Negro literatures. Since the spirituals grew out of slave experience and subsequent conditions similar to slavery, they are representative of ideas of God held by the masses in the whole period of study. All right. And it says, in treating the ideas of God in the Negro spirituals, although they follow the traditional compensatory pattern, it should be stated here that spirituals represent one of the greatest contributions to American culture. The creation of spirituals was hardly an accident in Negro life. It was a creation born of necessity in order that the slave might more adequately adjust himself to the new condition in the new world. Let's read that part again. It was a creation born of necessity in order that the slave might more adequately adjust himself to the new condition in the new world. All right, so think about that for a moment. Just think about it. Just think about this paragraph for a moment. And it says, speaking of the spirituals, in another connection, the writer says, these songs are the expression of the restriction and domination which their creators experienced in the world about them. They represent the soul life of the people. They embody the joy and sorrow, the hope and despair, the pathos and aspiration of the newly transplanted people. And through them, the race was able to endure suffering and survive. Clearly, the Negro spirituals are not songs of hate. They are not songs of revenge. They are songs neither of war nor of conquest. They are songs of the soil and of the soul. All right. And it said it is this sole quality of the spirituals that make their contribution to American life and culture a unique one. All right, so he mentioned about James Weldon Johnson and the song called "Old Black and Unknown Bards." Okay, so let's just go into it. It says there is a wide wonder in it all, that from degraded rest of servile toil, the fiery spirit of the seer should call these simple children of the sun and soil. Oh, black slave singers, gone, forgot, unfamed. You alone of all the long line of those who sung untaught, unknown, unnamed, have stretched out upward, seeking the divine. You sang not deeds of heroes or of kings, no chant of bloody war, no exulting pen of arms won triumphs, but your humble strains. You touched in chords with music, was it Imperium? You sang far better than you knew the songs that for your listeners' hungry hearts suffers still live, but more than this to you belongs. You sang a race from wood and stone to Christ. All right. The spirituals have their origins in slavery or under condition comparable to slavery are characteristic of ideas of God held by many Negroes throughout the entire period from 1760 to now. The ideas of God in the early sermon and those in very recent sermons are very similar to the ideas set forth in the spiritual. Thus, it is in order to begin the survey of mass literature with the spirituals. All right, so just to stop right there, you guys need to check this book out. It's called The Negro's Gods as Reflected in His Literature. All right. And then he also written an article, and you could go on the website. You could go on jster.org. Okay, jster.org, which stands for Journal Storage. Okay, and on this page, it goes into the Journal of Negro Education. Okay, and it was written in 1960. And chapter 3, it says the significance of the Negro private and church related college by Benjamin E. Mays, the president of Morehouse, president of the United Negro College Fund. All right. So that's basically it. Okay. Um. So speaking of Negro spirituals, right, and Negro understanding of God. So as I mentioned back in one of my videos about what was this guy's name? Henry McNeil Turner. So Henry McNeil Turner was one of the archbishops from South Carolina who see God as a Negro. He was one of the first to say God should be reflection of man. God should be reflection of the black man or black people. All right. So Negro spiritual hymns has its origin because it can be dated back to African customs. All right. So there's a documentary. Matter of fact, let me pull up the documentary for you guys. When you get a chance to watch this documentary on YouTube. Okay, so but there's a documentary called History of Gospel Music. Let me look it up. Okay, so shoot, I'm trying to find it. Okay, so I can't find the name of the documentary. I think this is it. Hold on. I think this is the name of it. Yeah, I think this is it right here. Okay, so this is called History of Gospel Music, right? So if you guys go on the YouTube website and just check out the history of gospel music, it goes into the origin of it. Talks about it has its origin of the African roots, right? So you will see that if you listen to it closely, like if you listen to this gospel group called Sound of Blackness, if you listen to their music very closely, you will hear a lot of African origins. And it's like that with all gospel music. It has a lot of African origins to it. Okay. So when Benjamin E. May spoke about the spiritual and the spiritual songs and stuff, it reflects on how the slaves were using it as a way to bring about adaptation. So our African ancestors always used music as a way to tell a story, to narrate something, or if it was like to call a war or to bring about healing. Okay. So for a lot of slaves, gospel music was a way to heal themselves. Gospel hymns, spiritual hymns, Negro spirituals, it was a way to uh, it was a way to bring about adjustment into the life they were living at that time, as far as the condition they were suffering and all of that, etc. All right, so the name of this documentary is called The History of Gospel Music. I think it's more to this, but let me see. Yeah, it's more to it, but you can look it up on BBC. Hmm. Yeah, so you can also find it on Amazon. It's called The Story of Gospel Music. Yeah. You can find it on Amazon, The Story of Gospel Music. And again, goes into the origin and history, etc. That's the name of The Story of Gospel Music. All right, so all right, but anyways, That's all I have for today. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Oh, also, I want to show you guys this. Last but not least, you can also find out more information about Benjamin E. Mays on Wikipedia. Okay. You can find out more information on Wikipedia right here. So, all right. So that's a statue of him right in Temple Riverwalk. Okay. So he was at the University of Chicago. That's the building. Okay. That's Howard University. All right. So if you guys want to learn more about Benjamin E. Mays, you can find out more information on Wikipedia as well. All right. So that's all I have for today, you guys. And thank you guys for those of you who are watching. I'm sorry for my sound earlier. I was trying to get my sound together, but now everything sounds good. So if you guys are just, for those of you that just coming in, please watch the video from the very beginning. And also make sure you subscribe to my channel, like my channel, share my channel, etc. So, yep, that's it. Let me see something. Let me see. So let me go to the comment section. The above is convenient. This link below is author between 1899 and 1920s who covered the topics discussed today. And he said the link is too big. Okay. Read the first paragraph of Amanda Berry article on Wikipedia for an image of God reference. Okay, so let me just go back up there real quick. Okay, let me go back. Shout out to Vinyasa. Let me go back to Wikipedia real fast. Okay, let me. Let me go back real quick. He was telling me to read something about Amanda Berry. All right, let me look up Amanda Berry. Amanda Berry Smith. Okay. Let me post it up. Let me see. Let's see. You said the first paragraph. Let's talk about the first paragraph. Hmm. Okay, so let me go to the first paragraph of this article. It says Amanda Berry Smith, January 23rd, 1837, February 24th, 1915, was a Methodist preacher and a former slave who funded the Amanda Smith Orphanage, an industrial home for abandoned and destitute colored children. She was a leader in the Wesleyan holiness movement, preaching the doctrine of entire sanctification throughout Methodist camping meetings across the world. She was referred to as God's image carved in ebony. International preacher, the Reverend Dr. A. Louise Bonaparte is her great great granddaughter. Okay. So is that what you're talking about, Vinyasa? I hope that's what you're talking about. I hope that's what you're trying to get at. Are you talking about the God's image carved in ebony? Let me see. I know it says down here in the early years of the 20th century, Smith continued to visit various nations and gained a reputation as God's image carved in ebony. Okay. Mm, she has built a reputation for herself. Wow. As God's image carved in ebony. In ebony. Wow. So the concept of God being black, all right, and as I mentioned before, it did not just start with the people. It did not just start with the people that you see in the conscious community. It always been going on like that. Okay, it's been going on for. It's been preached for years. It's been preached for decades. Henry Manel Turner, as you can see, Amanda Berry Smith, and so many others. Okay, they all preach the concept of seeing God as a reflection of man, as a reflection of a black person. So this ain't something new. Oh, and speaking of the Congo power, not to mention my favorite, Vida Kempa. Vida Kempa from the Angola Congolese area, right? She had the Anatonian movement in the Congos, and she preached that Jesus was a black man, and Jesus came up out the Congos, and God was black. She preached that to the people. She was a Catholic. She was a Catholic. And if you go to Savannah, Georgia, for anybody that hasn't visited Savannah yet, go to Savannah, Georgia, and go to the first African Baptist church in Savannah. They have like, okay, over in the area where the pulpit, like near the pulpit area, you will see like the little what's it, the Cosmogram, the little Congo Cosmogram, right? It sits right inside that church. They have the actual Congo Cosmogram that sits inside that church in Savannah, Georgia, right at the first. What's it? It's the first African Baptist church. So if anybody goes to visit Savannah, Savannah got such a rich history. I love Savannah. It has such a rich history. Okay, when it comes to African people, because that's where you'll find out that there's Gullah Geechee people out there. But go through my previous videos where I talk about my trip to Savannah, Georgia. You guys will find that out. All right, just look up Savannah, Georgia, Gullah Geechee, etc. Okay, no, is it Savannah and Tybee Island? Yeah, look up Savannah and Tybee Island. Okay, you'll find that out. But yeah, people been talking about seeing themselves as gods for years. And like I said, the Anatonian movement, what Kimpa Vita or Vita Kimpa from the Congo area, right? She was young. This girl was like in her 20s. She was like 20 years old, running a religious movement. And her movement was a way to rebel against the Portuguese, to keep the Portuguese from trying to take over the Congo area. And she was trying to let the leader know about what was going on, what was happening, what was taking place. So if you want to talk about that, the earliest form of black nationalism, that's what she would represent. But she didn't use the term black nationalism like we do today. She didn't use the term, Pan-Africanism, but that's what she represented. She stood on those principles. All right. So, even though I'm getting off topic, to say that, black people and black Christians always been a big part of the social movement, political movement, everything. They was a big part of that. Okay. They was the ones that brought about the earliest form of conscious community. What we know as a conscious community, that really started with them. If you want to get technical, that really started with them. They brought the earliest form of conscious community. They kind of introduced that. So, just go back and study the history. That's all I got to say. Study the history even more. Okay? The conscious community and its origin came about the school of black churches. It created that foundation. It gave away that platform. And I ain't talking about these churches that want to act all bougie and try to act all Europeanized. I'm talking about the churches that were more into black nationalism, like the AME Church, the African Methodist Church. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about the early form of churches that were dealing with black nationalism and stand on the principle of what we know as Pan-Africanism. Okay? They gave rise to social consciousness. They gave rise to black consciousness. All right? They gave rise to all of that. So, you got to give credit to where credit is due. You look at Garvey. Garvey was a Catholic. Garvey was a Catholic. But his foundation of the UNIA gave away platform to others from various schools of thought. He had people that were Muslims, that were Christian, that were Jewish, or that was, into what we call today the Hebrew Israelites, that were non-religious affiliate. He had people from different ethnic backgrounds that supported him. So Garvey movement gave rise, gave a platform to many others. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is all these different black Christians that you know about or that you haven't heard of, they played a big part in that. So that goes to show you that the Abrahamic religion, or, especially Christianity in the black community, opened up the doors of opportunity for social consciousness and black awareness and African centeredness in our community. It opened up the doors of that. It made people comfortable. Y'all got to really study into these things. I understand people have their views or whatnot, and you're entitled to it, and a lot of it makes sense, but then we got to really give credit to what credit is due. All right, so again, thank you guys for tuning in and watching. I hope you guys have a good one. So I'm about to go ahead and log off. Peace and power elevation. This your girl Tiffany, and you guys be safe, okay? And that's all I gotta say. So make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, check out my channel, share my channel, and check out all the other videos that I've done previously. Look up the one that I did about Savannah, Georgia, and Tybee Island. And I did the one about the conscious community and black church with some people on there. So you guys just check out the channel. And as a matter of fact, I would share the videos in my community session. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna share it in my community session, and you guys can see it for yourself. Okay. All right. So until next time, peace and power, and I will be with y'all again. All right. Thank you.